Hey viewers and viewesses, my name is John Red Strategist and welcome to another little indie horror game. Now, last one I actually did, technically was in Unagi Tunnel, but I figured I might come back and do some more of just random little games I picked up off sites like Game Jolt, off itch.io, things like that. So this is The Treatment, ladies and gentlemen. This is from itch.io, this one. I've actually downloaded a load from that site recently. And all I know is that it's set on a train. That's all I know about it. I remember actually I once did do a horror game that was set on a train. Way back in the day. I think it was just called The Train, wasn't it? I think it was a Russian horror game. My mouse cursor is on the screen. Don't know if you can see that. Oh. Oh boy. Wow, check out that environment though. Is my mouse cursor... Okay, right, I just clicked. Mouse cursor's disappeared, fortunately. Oh boy. Well, this is going to be lovely, isn't it? Oh, look. There you go, you can see the tunnel out there. Do not lean on doors. And first thing he does, leans on the door to see if maybe it opens. Wouldn't that just be a little bit of attention to detail? Lean on the door and it opens and you fall out, land on the tracks and that's it, you're dead. The detail here, rules of conduct. For the safety and comfort of all customers riding the train, all riders must obey the rules. They're the law. Failure to pay the fare or violation of any other rule can result in arrest, fine and or ban. No destroying subway property, no littering or creating unsanitary conditions, no smoking, no drinking alcoholic beverages, no panhandling or begging, no amplification devices on platforms, no more than one seat per person, no blocking free movement, no lying down, no unauthorised commercial activities, no entering tracks, tunnels and non-public areas, no bulky items likely to I should say inconvenience, not inconvenience others. No radio playing audible, probably should say audibly, to other passengers. Okay, CCA. I believe the guy who made this is Ignacio Serra, something like that. Oh wow, there's even like a transit. What? What are the names of these stations here? Okay, transit map, all city lines. Okay, so it's kind of like basically, yeah, it's standard sort of underground map. Johnson, Chan, California, N Bend, Marge, A Lincoln, Hannah, Austin, Albert, Laguna, Central, Compton, Betty, Crumpler, Vanco, Jack, Shannon, N Gate, S Beach, Cross, West End, Franco, Market, Mill. There's ones over on the right as well that are harder to read. Kingsway, Comia, Savannah, something like that. Huh. I wonder if there are kind of references in those names. Maybe to people who backed the game. Like I say, this is available on itch.io. And technically you can download it for free. Or, you know, you can donate money to the creator if you wish. Live free, spend free. Get the card that works for you and your goals. A travel card, basically. I can't read the rest of the text. Sorry, I'm just taking my time. Because look at the fucking detail in here. This reminds me so much of the London Underground whenever I've been on that, because you know you get all the adverts pasted up all over the edges of the carriage and things like that. Tax Maestro, get 50% off, use coupon code, blah blah blah. Fizz, same name, same classic taste. Okay. Do we have any others? Fizz. Winners play here. Hundreds of slots and tables at Bullseye Casino, apparently. Okay, sure. Ooh, what's that? Some might say calling your best friend every day is crazy. We like crazy. We think you'll like us too. Okay. Well, what's that? Additional $29 a week? A week? Bloody hell. Jesus. Good lord. You must have to pay a fortune with that mobile plan. Good god. That's the true horror, isn't it, in this game? The mobile phone plan is bloody expensive. Hello there. Adventure ready. Born ready... ABC? I can't tell what that says. It looks like either a B, a backwards B, or a 4 or something. Okay, who are you exactly? Do I have zoom eyes? No, I don't. In some of these horror games, if you like hold down right mouse button, it kind of like does a zoom in, but no, not in this one apparently. I'm guessing it's just basic WASD controls in this one. That's the rules of conduct again. At some point, something is going to be waiting up for me ahead in the carriage. I feel like this is probably one of those games where I can only move forward, because unless it's going to do that thing where suddenly reality is going to melt down and suddenly we can go off the train into other areas, I don't know. Oh boy, I'm just waiting for something to jump. Right as he says it, the noises begin. Now where did that come from, do you reckon? No. Ooh! Oh! Beg your pardon? Okay, we're on the subway to hell now, apparently. The next stop is Purgatory. Please leave here for 9 Circle of Hell. Yes. For passengers wishing to transfer... I fucking heard that. Somebody creeping around. Do we just have to get to the front of the train? Is that what's going on? No! 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 Not dealing with that. We can get the fuck out of here. I mean, there's no point examining the surroundings now, because it's all fucking dark, isn't it? Ooh! Hello! Hi! You're a weird... Ooh. I beg your... What?
You did very well for the first session.
What?
This time we have only worked with your claustrophobia and nyctophobia, but if you feel capable, we can introduce others in the next session. There's no pressure on that. This treatment is a slow process.
What? Well, this came out of fucking left field. I can't say I was expecting this to happen. What's going on? I can't... Oh. Really? Was that it? Thank you for playing a game by Ignacio Sierra. What? Wow. Well, that was quick, wasn't it? Oh, man. I mean, I suppose the concept is good, isn't it? Oh, boy. Well, I'm going to have to try and maybe combine this with another game? I don't know. How am I going to do this? Because that total gameplay there must have been, what, 4 or 5 minutes? Can't have been much to that. It's basically just a few jump scares and then that at the end. I mean, this, like I said, this is more of a concept than an actual game, really. I was expecting there was going to be much more than that. I thought, as soon as it went to that scene with the machine above me, I thought it was going to be like, oh, would you like to return to the simulation or something? And it would put me on a different train with different jump scares or something. I mean, don't get me wrong, though. It had atmosphere. And it definitely, well, I wouldn't say it had as much atmosphere as some games I played. I think some of the sounds you could put a bit more sound into the background just to make it a bit spooky. I mean, you can hear sort of something there in the background, but, well, I mean, it was interesting as a concept, don't get me wrong. So, good stuff there, Ignacio Sierra. I'd like to see maybe what you could produce if you had much more to work with, maybe. But, overall, decent job. Okay, I'm back in. Basically, I just quit out just to check how long the footage was. Well, what, friggin' 7 minutes in there? Which is not really enough for a single episode. I was thinking about maybe I would play another game and just kind of combine them into one video, but actually, you know what? I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to maybe come back into the game and just talk for a while, because I thought, actually, you know what? I could probably string this episode out a little bit if I, perhaps, I don't know, just have a wander around and admire the scenery and all that, and maybe talk a little bit about horror, because I thought, this would be an interesting idea. What makes a good horror and all that? It'd be a good topic of conversation. I don't think I've ever really talked about that before, but having played a lot of, a lot of kind of little indie horror games, stuff like that, I think it'd be just maybe something interesting. Ooh, that's newspaper I didn't notice before. It says all prepare for something like that. Something, I can't read the rest of it. It's a bit too, text is a bit too small and all that. But yes, I mean, one thing that this game definitely has going is obviously the claustrophobic environment, being set on a train like this. It does remind me a lot of that train one that I played way back in the day. The Russian one, which I mentioned before. That was not a bad one, except that of course was a bit different in the sense that the whole thing wasn't just set on a train. It kind of started off on the train, had a couple of scenes, but then it sort of became this more kind of psychological thing about your character's life, things like that. Okay, here we go, it's getting dark. What I actually kind of want to test out maybe is if you can go back, and if anything happens when you go back, because it might be just worth investigating, just to see if maybe there is something, because you never know. I doubt there's going to be, but who knows. But yes, so I was saying, what makes a kind of good horror game in my eyes? Well, obviously, there's no kind of silver bullet answer to that. At the end of the day, horror is kind of a subjective kind of thing, and what scares one person, might not necessarily scare someone else, and vice versa. So, take me, for example. When I played Outlast, I didn't really think much of it as a game. I thought it was some of the jumps. It was a bit too jump scare and gore heavy. and it got to a point where eventually the jump scares and things stopped being kind of scary to me. But, you know, if you go on kind of like Steam and you look at the reviews, stuff like that, you'll see so many people rave about games like Outlast, which I think just goes to show, you know, people have different tastes, so there's no kind of magical answer to say, you know, this is the perfect way to do horror or whatever. I think it's something which really it kind of depends on what kind of horror you want to go for. So if you kind of know anything about me from all the horror games I played, if you watch a lot of the horror stuff, the horror content on my channel, you'll know that one of my favourite horror games that I've ever played here on General Red Strategist, if not the favourite, was probably SCP Containment Breach back in the day. And SCP Containment Breach, of course, is a kind of, well, it does a lot of things differently to a game like Outlast. So, you know, whereas Outlast has a lot of blood and gore and a lot of jump scares, and you know, there's a lot of loud noises, kind of very loud kind of orchestral tunes at times. Well, I say at times, quote unquote. Obviously, SCP Containment Breach has a very kind of different style to it. It obviously it has these kind of very dark, claustrophobic environments, like you see right now in this game, and certainly as is the case in parts of Outlast. But SCP Containment Breach doesn't have as much, of course, in the way of blood and gore. Because my personal philosophy towards horror is always blood and gore you have to use sparingly. Because that's one of the things I didn't really like about Outlast. I thought it was a bit kind of, I don't know, it overdid it with the blood and gore. It was like every other room you go into in Outlast, somebody has had their brains painted up on the wall. But SCP Containment Breach doesn't do that. Another thing I liked about SCP Containment Breach was the sound design. Because if you've played that game, you'll know, of course, that SCP Containment Breach uses a lot of not very loud music tracks. It uses a lot of very quiet, very sort of very low, very kind of how do I describe it? Very low tracks which are designed to sort of fray at your nerves gradually, and that's what I really liked about it. Because I remember the first time I played Containment Breach, it was one of those horror games where I had a constant sense of dread as I was playing it, and I can't say there's a great many horror games that I've played where I've always had that consistently throughout it. At times it's been, you know, maybe I felt a bit of dread, but other times I felt not quite as on edge. But no, Containment Breach, first time I played that from start to finish, I remember being pretty much on edge throughout the whole playthrough. And I think that's a testament really to the sound design, because sound design, in my opinion, is everything in a good horror game. Because obviously in many horror games you're going to be in very dark environments, kind of like you see right now. And so in those kind of environments, is it worth kind of spending a lot of effort on the visuals when, of course, nobody's really going to see them? I mean, obviously, that's not to say, you know, you can't put some effort into the visuals. There might be times in your storyline where your player character enters more well-lit environments. But sound design, yeah, is definitely, probably, look at the contradiction in what I just said, definitely, probably. Sound design is definitely very, very important. And that's, like I say, one reason why I like Containment Breach. Because if there's one thing that the guy who made Containment Breach got right, it was the sound design. He added so many little kind of sound effects in the background that sometimes just play as you're kind of wandering along, and it just puts you on edge because you can't tell what's a threat or what's just a scripted sound effect that's designed to go off every so often and kind of scare you. So yeah, that was the thing. And another thing that I think made Containment Breach quite good for me was that there was a fair diversity in the monsters and the mechanics that were associated with them. So for example, you had SCP-173, where the deal with him is, of course, you have to just, you know, keep him under direct observation, and you have to time your blinks so that he doesn't get you, which of course that kind of necessitates a certain playstyle where you have to kind of take things a little bit cautiously. But then you have SCP-106, who kind of comes up sporadically out of the ground and chases you, and in that case you have to run away from him. So you have to kind of put as much distance between yourself and him as possible. And of course then you have, you know, other monsters and entities which you have to avoid at the same time, and they have their own little kind of peculiarities. And so that's what I liked, because that's something that I felt with Outlast. Even though it had technically lots of enemy characters, like Chris Walker, Dr. Traeger, stuff like that. In terms of their actual mechanics, they were actually very similar in terms of how how you deal with them. And that's the thing. In the end, it kind of got very repetitive in terms of its gameplay, did Outlast. And I also kind of felt that for the storyline it was trying to tell, I didn't think Outlast needed to be as long as it did. So yeah, So that's some thoughts, everybody, on what I think kind of makes a good horror, for me personally. Obviously, like I say, horror is kind of subjective. There's no sort of one-size-fits-all to it. What one person finds scary, someone else might not necessarily find as creepy, and vice versa. So that's just a bit of extra padding for this video in order to string it out a little bit, because 7 minutes, for playing through the actual game itself isn't very long, and is not really enough for a single video. So yeah, hope you all enjoyed that, everybody. Thank you, Ignacio Sierra, again, for your little concept of a game. It'd be interesting to see if you maybe made a kind of extended version of this, which had a bit more to it. But yeah, maybe a bit more of kind of like a storyline. Who knows? So, other than that, I'm going to wrap up here. Facebook and Twitter links down below, along with a link to my propagandist channel for anyone interested. In the meantime, of course, if you enjoyed, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, share my content with your friends on social media, all that jazz. And, if you want to, let me know down in the comments. What do you personally find scary in horror? What do you find scariest, and what sort of horror maybe doesn't work so much on you? But other than that, this is John Red signing off. Goodbye, everybody. Come on, keep moving, please. That's there. Got him. Right, let's get past some cars there so we can get across to where that gold tooth is. That's good. Passing effects, cause the lag, of course. So yeah, like I said, let me know in the comments. Let me know in the comments, everybody. Because that's the thing about this game, Alice. In many ways, kind of like my Survey Being Hunted series, these Alice episodes, because they typically tend to be quite long, and the gameplay is fairly repetitive at times, with a lot of platforming, solving puzzles, things like that. It's nice to have a bit of a conversation, and turn these episodes almost into kind of like a podcast sort of style, so to speak. So yeah, good stuff. Okay, right, a little bit of a checkpoint here. So what's the deal?